Hello and welcome to the Moonshots Podcast. It's episode 262. I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and as always, I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Mark Pearson-Freeland. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Good morning, listeners, subscribers, viewers, and everybody who's dialing in to check out one of the, let's call it, most fascinating, imagination-orientated, but also very, very practical episodes today, Mike, that we're going to be diving into as show number 262.
That's right. I feel like this is going to be an open-minded and generative discussion.
Oh, I like that little setup, and you're totally right, Mike. If that sounds a little bit like the area that our listeners want to lean into, today is the perfect opportunity to do so, because we are going to be leaning into and learning from Sam Altman, who, as we might know, is a luminary in the tech industry, whose journey, as I'm reading from ChatGPT, Mike actually wrote this for me, whose journey to prominence began with co-founding Looped back in 2005, Mike. So this guy, Sam Altman, we might be aware is this, president and leader of OpenAI. As we're going to lean into on today's show, he's pretty prominent nowadays with artificial intelligence. He's actually an individual whose career began over nearly 20 years ago in founding new businesses. From there, he then became president over a little thing called Y Combinator. So he had a little bit of experience with advising some of the biggest brands in the world as well. But now here we are nowadays where he's this leading figure within the OpenAI and AGI space. We can't kind of go into a lot of the advice that he's got for us nowadays without taking a look at that past, without looking at those successes and pieces of information that he gathered along the way, can we?
No, he if doing OpenAI was not enough as a CEO, he's done a great venture capital firm, an accelerator. He's had his own successful exit of $43 million for his first startup. This guy has done it all, and he might be the next Elon. So if you want to figure out how the thinking that led to OpenAI, or you want to find how somebody can win in venture capital in their own startup, in accelerating and helping other startups, Sam Altman's done it all. You can too. There's a clear line of thinking here. Mark, where should we start on this epic Sam Altman journey?
Look, I think, as you've already referenced, there's an opportunity for Sam to become, if he hasn't already, the next Elon Musk. But another chap, another visionary who is up in the echelon of Elon Musk is just this little well-known guy called Bill Gates. And we've got this fantastic opening clip today on our show, 262, on Sam Altman, who's going to explain and set up for us a little bit around one of the applications of Sam Altman's business, OpenAI, and that's ChatGPT. So let's hear from Bill Gates and Sam Altman, two very impressive visionaries, hitting us up and introducing us to this concept of ChatGPT.
I was privileged to see your work as it evolved, and I was very skeptical. Like, I did not expect ChatGPT to get so good. And it blows my mind, and we don't really understand the encoding that, we know the numbers, we can watch it multiply, but the idea of where is Shakespearean encoded, do you think we'll gain an understanding of the representation?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Trying to do this in a human brain is very hard. You could say it's a similar problem, which is there are these neurons, they're connected, the connections are like moving, and we're not going to slice up your brain and watch how it's evolving. But this we can perfectly X-ray. And there has been some very good work on interpretability, and I think there will be more over time. So yeah, I think we will be able to understand these networks, but our current understanding is low. The little bits we do understand have, as you'd expect, been very helpful in improving these things. So we're all motivated to really understand them, scientific curiosity aside. But the scale of these is so vast, and it is, we could also say where in your brain is Shakespeare encoded and how's that represented?
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't really know. But it somehow feels like even less satisfying to say we don't know yet in these masses of numbers that we're supposed to be able to perfectly X-ray and watch and do any test we want on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure within the next 5 years we'll understand it. And in terms of both training efficiency and accuracy, that understanding would let us do far better than we're able to do today.
100%. You see this in a lot of the history of technology where someone makes an empirical discovery. They have no idea what's going on, but it clearly works. And then as the scientific understanding deepens, they can make it so much better.
Yeah, no, that in physics, biology, it's sometimes just messing around and it's like, whoa, how does this actually come together?
In our case, we had, someone that was the guy that built GPT-1 sort of did it off by himself and saw this, and it was somewhat impressive. But no deep understanding of how it worked or why it worked. And then we got these scaling laws where we could predict how much better it was going to be. That was why when we told you we could do that demo, we were pretty confident it was going to work. We hadn't trained the model, but we were pretty confident. And that has led us to a bunch of attempts and better scientific understanding of what's going on. But it really came from a place of empirical result first.
So we can talk about continuous improvement or scaling up improvement, but I think the headline here is what OpenAI have with ChatGPT. One thing for certain, they have only just begun. And what is crazy about this concept, Mark, is ChatGPT as a product is being adopted at least as fast as Facebook was in its first 5 years. They've already hit 100 million users. And you would argue they have far more utility value than Facebook. So what we have the great joy and curiosity of seeing, Mark, is a startup that is game-changing. I would argue at least equivalent to that of NVIDIA. Maybe you could even say conceptually NVIDIA and GPT products kind of go hand in hand because you need the compute, you need the processing power to power these software solutions that we use. So you need the power to ingest data, train the model. So it's fascinating for us to actually just live in this moment, Mark, where we go, oh my gosh, with both NVIDIA and OpenAI, we're seeing two transformative companies. You could argue they're just like Microsoft when they were introduced, when they really came to bear in the 90s, maybe Apple with the iPhone, maybe Amazon with the cloud. I think we're at least seeing that, if not more. And to me, the interesting parallel about what we heard there is there's a whole history of scientific discoveries that have been made. Bill mentions, biology and physics, for example, where they discovered this exponential thing.
Yep.
They didn't quite understand. It took them some time to figure it out. So I think that's perhaps the optimist view, not the skeptic view of generative AI. I know there's a lot of conversation around this, but it is possible to make that leap and say, hey, well, we can use, generative AI to help us understand generative AI, and we're going to figure this out. It has an amazing power. Like, I just think about this, Mark. I put a spreadsheet that had 5,000 rows with all this metadata in there, and I threw it in, and I asked all of these questions of what they were, all different titles being listed, right? Imagine 5,000 books or 5,000 movies in a list. And I'm like, tell me which ones are really good, or which ones are good for this, and what meet this genre, and like which ones are more like this. And it was taking, this is ChatGPT, was taking this list and answering my question in less than 5 seconds.
Wow.
To have answered this question as rigorously, I would have required 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how good. I'm not sure how good my answer would have been after the 5 hours mark.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's a small vignette, but the point I want to make is not only is ChatGPT groundbreaking now. We've only just begun. That is the scope of this discovery. I find this so exciting, don't you, Mark?
Look, it's such an interesting space, and Sam, as we're going to find out later in the show, has so much to teach us from his experience as, a founder. But before we even get into that, isn't it curious to be able to cover a technology at its infancy?
Yes.
This calls to mind some of the discoveries. I'm not going to claim, Sam is necessarily our generation's Einstein, but there will certainly be work that Einstein was doing that was perhaps more pivotal or important later down the line. I feel as though this is the beginning of a topic like electricity that gets used decades down the line.
I think
this is Ford.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Building a car.
This is the Gutenberg Press.
Yes, exactly. This is the right at the start of something substantial.
Yep.
You're right. It's not necessarily fully comprehended how it's going to be used, but that's kind of the beauty of it.
Right.
And it's very much led by certain individuals who have the capacity to articulate, but also bring to life this concept. And sometimes that starts with having a really aligned vision. Sometimes it just starts with being in the right place at the right time, whatever it might be. Sam has led us to this point already, whereby 100 million plus users are using one of his products, is one of his applications of AI already. And as you just pointed out, Mike, it saved you 4 hours, 5 hours.
4 hours, 59 minutes.
55 seconds, yeah, exactly. And that is just the start.
Yep.
It can be quite easily applied to computers as personal assistants and so on. And a lot of our listeners and viewers will probably be utilizing the product already as well. But it reminds me very much already of somebody like Elon, who leans into a space that maybe people are a little bit nervous of, or maybe people don't want him to lean into, much like getting into space and having other astronauts, saying that it shouldn't be privatized and that he shouldn't be able to create businesses that kind of capitalize on such a broad space. I think it always requires somebody to be in that driving seat to make it happen. And Sam is certainly in that seat right now, isn't he?
I would say the curious thing here is, look, the Gutenberg Press fundamentally changed things. The railway fundamentally changed these things. Jumbo jets, all of these technologies, like, for example, the Catholic Church really freaked out about the printing press originally.
Yeah.
But do we now think of books as a bad thing? So, of course, if we just admit, there's a little bit of research here. People resisted the introduction of electricity. Owners of horse-drawn carriages were really scared of automobiles.
Well, there you go.
Right? So my point is, we just don't know. The scale is intense. The opportunity and the threat is significant. But it's natural. We're change resistant. We're humans. We like the status quo, right?
Look, remember, we all got uncomfortable when Reed Hastings was digitizing a lot of movies.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses went out with the rise of Netflix. Likewise, Steve Jobs brings out the iPod. Suddenly you're condensing all these physical products into your phone. It's uncomfortable when those big innovation changes happen.
Yeah.
And what generally takes place is, things become more efficient. They become more controlled. They become more understood. And I think we're just at the start of a brand new turning point there, not only with a real product that comes out and has the ability to improve people's lives, but I think, as you already called out earlier, this comparison to social media, it will impact behaviors, decision-making, and the way that people probably use all of our different products will probably change slightly. Exactly. So, I mean, we're really at this innovation point, aren't we, of real change being on the horizon.
But there's one thing for sure. There's one decision that you can make, and that is to be a member of the Moonshots podcast.
Oh, you know what, Mike? I don't even need to load up ChatGPT to answer that question, because I fully comprehend and believe in the value that all of our members get each and every week from the Moonshot Show. So please, without further ado, bring in the trumpets and let's celebrate Bob, Niles, Tripton, Dietmar, Marjan, Connor, Lisa and Sid, Mr. Bonjour, Paul, Berg and Kalman, Joe, Christian, Samola and Barbara, Deborah, Lasse, Steve, Craig, Ravi, Yvette, Raul and Nikawara, Ingram, Dirk, Venkata, Marco, Jet, Roger, Steph, Raw, Nimalen and James, Diana, Christoph, Denise, Laura, Smitty, Corey, Daniela and Mike. High five to you guys for being Plus annual members, along with Antonio, Zachary, Austin, Fred, Ola, Andy, Diana and Margie, Ron, Jesper, and our latest member, Fabian. Thank you guys so much for your continued support of the Moonshots podcast, as well as getting access to all of our shows every week. You also get access as members into our Moonshots Master series. So thank you so much, guys, for supporting the show.
Yeah, big shout out and respect. We really do appreciate your support. That helps us put the show together. So thank you to each and every one of you. So now when we think about what Sam Altman and OpenAI are up to, this is quite fortuitous, this next clip, because, Mark, when I have a little look in my news feed and I say, what's happening with OpenAI? Here we are, we're in late July 2024, and 10 hours ago, there's a headline, and it's going to set this clip up beautifully. And check out this. OpenAI tests new search engine called SearchGPT. It's happening, guys. I can tell you that my Google activity is plummeting because of ChatGPT. So it's time to think about, when you do something disruptive, you do tend to upset the apple cart, and there's a big apple cart called Google. So let's head over to this topic. How do you compete with one of the biggest tech companies on the planet?
I think, Mike, in answer to that question, let's jump straight into this clip with Sam Altman chatting to Lex with exactly that concept. How can you go up against the behemoths when you are just a little startup?
How do you, under this pressure that there's going to be a lot of open source, there's going to be a lot of large language models, under this pressure, how do you continue prioritizing safety? Versus, there's several pressures. So one of them is a market-driven pressure from other companies, Google, Apple, Meta, and smaller companies. How do you resist the pressure from that? Or how do you navigate that pressure?
You stick with what you believe in, you stick to your mission. I'm sure people will get ahead of us in all sorts of ways and take shortcuts we're not going to take. And we just aren't going to do that.
How do you outcompete them?
I think there's going to be many AGIs in the world, so we don't have to outcompete everyone. We're going to contribute one. Other people are going to contribute some. I think multiple AGIs in the world with some differences in how they're built and what they do and what they're focused on, I think that's good. We have a very unusual structure, so we don't have this incentive to capture unlimited value. I worry about the people who do, but hopefully it's all going to work out. But we're a weird org, and we're good at resisting pressure. We have been a misunderstood and badly mocked org for a long time. When we started, we announced the org at the end of 2015 and said we were going to work on AGI. People thought we were batshit insane.
Yeah.
I remember at the time a eminent AI scientist at a large industrial AI lab was DMing individual reporters, being these people aren't very good and it's ridiculous to talk about AGI and I can't believe you're giving them time of day. And it's that was the level of pettiness and rancor in the field at a new group of people saying we're going to try to build AGI.
So OpenAI and DeepMind was a small collection of folks who were brave enough to talk about AGI in the face of mockery.
We don't get mocked as much now.
Don't get mocked as much now.
So, okay. So let's just kind of draw an analogy here. Do you know the first person I thought of was Elon and Buzz Aldrin, and the critique he got when he said, "I will land a spaceship back, make it reusable, re-land the rocket," and he was facing all this criticism. And what did he do? He stuck to the mission, right?
Yeah, that's right. He did. He didn't let that adversity or that lack of belief put him off. Arguably that bravery that comes with creating a new product or going into space is demonstrated by both of those individuals,
Yes.
Musk as well as Altman, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's fascinating, Mike. Where do you start? Like when we're seeing this pattern that these great founders are sticking to the mission, facing competition and criticism. How do you face that? What would be your go-to list? Where do you start when you want to kind of build that armory and that Teflon so that they don't take you down?
Well, it's funny you use the word just then, which is this idea of mission. When you've got a mission in place and a clearly defined goal or a vision, that is what drives, I think, your ability as a business leader, as a innovator, as somebody who's just trying to get up and do the right thing each day. It becomes that little bit easier, because whether you're Elon Musk and you've got Buzz Aldrin, your childhood hero, saying to you, "Look, mate, you're never going to make this work," or somebody like Altman, who is working with preeminent, artificial intelligence experts who's saying these guys are insane, they don't know what they're talking about. The only way, I think, to level your confidence and be able to stay true to what you're trying to do is by having that really established foundation and knowing, we're going to stick to this because I want to go out and create this open business. I want to go out and create a product that's orientated around values. And I think that only can come when you've really understood and have aligned your reason why.
Oh, bingo. I think you just hit it. So personally, when you face criticism, you have to know your ikigai, right? You have to know what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what you're passionate about, what the world needs. As a company, you can use Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. It really comes down to what are we doing, how are we doing it, and why, because that's what people buy. Now, you can have those things, Mark, but I think there's something that comes after this. And I'm thinking of the idea that Jeff Bezos talks about, which is be stubborn on vision, but flexible on how you get there. Because I do think something that we've heard before is that when criticism comes, that's a great opportunity for improvement, right? You can contemplate it objectively and calmly, and you can truly really consider, shall we say, what people have to say. But that only really works if you've got that clear, what do we do, how we do it, why do we do it? And I particularly see this as a fundamental requirement for any business that's trying to scale. Because you can have the driving force of a founder and a small group of 10 or 20 people, but they need to transmit this to a much broader group when you get to 50 and 100. And it will not always be them. It'll be the other leaders in the organization. So the key nuance here is we talk about know your why and know your values, but it cannot only be one person. It must be shared amongst the leadership of the company. It must be demonstrated by that same group in order for the employees to go, hey, we're copying criticism on the outside, but I know what we're about. That's fine. Or if we flip into an individual perspective, if people are critical of how you are doing something, then you can be like, hey, thank you for the constructive feedback. And you can take it away and really think about, well, can I configure my ikigai model a little bit? And can I fine tune how I'm going about things? But maybe sometimes it leads to improvement. Maybe it doesn't. But I think it shouldn't be a death wound, right? It shouldn't be like a fatal flaw. But I actually think that the big thing here is that as we rush about in life, we sometimes forget to reflect on our personal ikigai. So we wake up one day and we're like, huh? How did I end up in this crazy situation? And you're like, oh, I'm off track, man, right? As Sarah Blakely would say, this is not the movie I'm meant to be in, right?
Yeah, and what a great line that was, you know, with Sarah creating a brand new product that would have also equally come up with a lot of criticism.
Yep.
Likewise, creativity, as we heard from Elizabeth Gilbert as well as Austin Kleon, you're going to run into people that are naysayers, you know. Haters going to hate, I think is that classic saying, much like we've seen with Elon, much like we've seen with other substantial innovators that we've covered on the show. And you're totally right. You can let all those naysayers put you off and distract you and say, actually, you know what, maybe they're right. Maybe this can't be done. You know, Jensen Huang setting up a business and then it becoming, you know, trillions of value. Again, he probably was going up against those big brands out of the garage. You know, they spend the first couple of months determining, okay, well, where should we put the fridge? How much are we going to spend on pizza? You know, all of this led them to, I think, creating really established values that then help them stay true in the long run to what they were trying to go out and achieve, didn't it?
Because if you remind people of those values, they can adopt them. Maybe they can even improve them. But the point is, when we flip from the individual case to the business case, it's classically the transition from a small to medium-sized business, right?
Yeah.
From like a seed round to getting into Series A, B, C, right? This is the point where you, as an agent, as a founder, can no longer drag everyone into a room and say, hey, guys, let's fix this. So you have to transmit this mission, the values, so others can, you know, I would say, you know, when you get like a Wi-Fi booster in your house? So you got the original Wi-Fi that pumps out, but then there's these extenders. Like you need as many people being able to extend the mission, the vision, the why we're here. And often the challenge in an organization going through growth transition is they relied on a founder, one individual being the beacon. But when they transition to the mid-sized organization, they now need 3 or 4 beacons carrying the message. So all of a sudden, the person that was used to like getting everyone in a room and say, hey guys, here's the vision, they have to lead the leaders in the business. And that is a different skill set. And that is challenging and almost a hidden challenge to facing the world, is making sure that the CEO has a CMO, a CFO, a COO, a CPO, who all sign up and truly own the mission and the vision just like they do. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. You can't always, as we've spoken on the show, you can't always work in the business. You know, there needs to be that individual who fully comprehends the direction of where it needs to go and steadies that direction when you get caught in the weeds. You know, there's so many startups and businesses that will struggle getting through those early stages. And unless you're being able to delegate to the right people, and as we know from somebody like Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus at the early point, then you're not going to be able to right that ship and actually get that exciting work done.
Big time. Now, we are mentioning a lot of other people that we've covered on the show. If somebody is keen to learn more about them, Mark, I wonder, could there be some place on this old school thing called the internet? It's not really generative AI, but it's certainly on the internet. Yeah. Where could they go, Mark?
Well, Mike, for those of us who are still in that archaic way of using the internet, as I'm sure all of us do, it's just a small little destination, with the hint being the name of this podcast, which is Moonshots. www.moonshots.io will give all of our members, as well as all of our listeners and viewers, access to all of our previous shows, all 262, if you can believe it. I'm always impressed every week when it keeps on increasing. Along in that destination, we can find transcriptions of all of our previous shows. You can find show notes and also a plethora of other innovators, entrepreneurs, and business superstars, including architects, including comedians, even Mike, all of whom inspire us to go out and be that best version of ourselves each day. Moonshots.io is the secret sauce to uncovering new, interesting tips to go out and live a pretty fun life.
I would agree. And we talked a lot about inspiration. If you are feeling inspired to start something new, maybe you're going to do your own little Sam Altman. Well, good news is this next clip is really going to give you a bit of the playbook, the recipe for starting your own startup.
That's right. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Sam is very well known now for his work with OpenAI and the formerly mentioned ChatGPT. However, he had an illustrious career prior to getting into this artificial intelligence space with Y Combinator. So we're going to hear a very quick snapshot of one of the courses that Y Combinator and Sam, who was president at the time, created, which provided real, concrete, habitual, useful advice to other startups. So without further ado, let's hear from the guys on YouTube with a bit of an introduction to some of the key elements from Sam Altman's Y Combinator class.
While he was president, Y Combinator came up with the idea of creating a class at Stanford that taught everything Y Combinator knew about how to start a startup. In this Stanford class, Sam Altman himself taught 2 of the classes. The rest of the classes were taught by people who all were part of starting multi-billion-dollar companies. You can still find this class online on YouTube. It's called How to Start a Startup. For Sam Altman's classes, he talks about how to start a successful, fast-growing startup. In it, he is honest in saying that startups are so unique that probably 70% of starting a startup cannot be taught because, again, every startup is different. But he believes about 30% of starting a startup can be taught. So Sam focused on that 30% in his classes. Here's a summary of what he taught. He focused in on 7 main ideas. Number 1, ideas and execution. Sam emphasized that a good idea alone isn't enough. Successful startups require excellent execution. However, Sam does emphatically say the idea really does matter. He used to think that the idea didn't matter that much. He used to think that a team could come together and just start throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. But at that point, he said he's very convinced that the idea really does matter. You need a great idea before you get started on a startup. He encourages students to focus on both the quality of the idea and the ability to execute it effectively. Number 2, co-founders. Sam mentions that almost all of the most successful startups at Y Combinator were co-founded. While he does say that it's better to be a solo founder than to have a terrible co-founder, it's really, really bad to have a terrible co-founder because it could kill your company. But it's best to find a really great co-founder. 1 to 3 other co-founders seems to be the best. He doesn't encourage you to have more than 3 co-founders. It's really hard to start a successful startup. If you have a group of co-founders who are all committed to the startup, it can help encourage one another. Your startup is a lot more likely to succeed. Number 3, market and product. Sam focuses a lot of time talking about the market. He thinks it's best to focus on a small but rapidly growing market. Instead of going after giant markets where there's already a ton of competition, he thinks it's best to try to find a small market that is growing really quickly so you can get in at the earliest stages of the market's development. These tend to be the kind of startups that succeed long term. They get into a market when it's really small, they monopolize those markets, and then by the time the market gets really big, they're still the biggest player in that market. When he talks about product, he really emphasizes how you should focus on getting 100 users to absolutely love your product. Instead of trying to get millions of users to kind of like your product, you should focus on just getting 100 users to love your product. If you can get 100 users to love your product, it will be a lot easier to expand from there. You're going to need users who love your product to be willing to give you money and to stop using the related services they currently use. You want customers to really love your product. Focus completely at the beginning of your startup on getting 100 active users who absolutely love your product and tell their friends about it naturally. Find those first users yourself. Talk to your friends, any connections you have, get them to start using the product. Constantly be talking to your users, iterating, and making your product better based on customer feedback.
So 3 big steps. I mean, Mark, I'm like, my brain is going many different directions here. Maybe what we should do is pick on, I actually think, like, let's go for the co-founder topic. And I'll tell you why. I think, like, ideas and execution go hand in hand. I think that's something we've covered a lot. We did a whole product series around that. Starting small in the market has been not quite as popular theme, but really common sense. Like, choose a little market you can dominate and expand from there. But I think the co-founder one for us is perhaps the least discussed and most important there. And I think that my takeout from what Sam is really talking about is I almost go to this logic. Starting a startup is really hard. We all know that the chances of actual success, meaning a sustainably profitable business, is actually like a 1 in 10 kind of a chance at best. Particularly if you say that it's going to last 3 years and consistently make a profit, like that's probably closer to 1 in 100, right? So we know it's really hard, and the burden as a single founder is incredibly high if you're building a team. And I think what we all see is so many duos or trios coming together, Airbnb, Netflix, the list goes on and on. So I want to kind of delve into this. I think a lot of people rush going for and finding co-founders. And I think a lot of people here around the co-founder topic, I think, choose to make a huge life commitment to co-found together with someone they don't know very well. So let's play a game. Let's imagine we were doing a startup right now and we need a third co-founder. How could you and I do a proper founder dating? How can we properly get to know them to ensure a better fit with a co-founder? What are your ideas?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I reckon there is definitely a case for past successes. And when I say the word success, I don't necessarily mean successful businesses, but established practices that they have learned from. So to explain it in a little bit more detail, I think what's valuable as a co-founder is finding similarly experienced people who have gone through the process before, maybe failed before, maybe struggled, and been able to still get through and maintain a level head. So the value of having, I think, experienced individuals on your team as co-founders would benefit a business, whether it's in a blossoming industry like AI, but also smaller product-orientated business categories as well. Benefits from teams that have been through the process before. A little bit like getting, seasoned players onto the court to go out and play your big game at the Olympics or whatever it might be. Having a little bit of experience probably maintains a lot more balance, don't you say?
Yeah, so that's definitely like kind of like criteria, right? Like we only want people that have actually had similar experiences. And I think that's very true because a lot of people like the idea of being a founder, but when faced with the brutal truth of what it looks and feels like, they run for the hills.
Yeah.
And
pretty uncomfortable sometimes.
But this is really a thing, like people don't realize that if you join a startup, not all the processes are figured out. This idea that you're building the plane while you fly it is actually makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
I think,
they fail to see that they are romanced with the idea, but then they are completely come undone in practice.
yeah. And I imagine exactly to your point, if it is 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 businesses that do succeed or make a profit, it's going to be those who have weathered the storm a little bit. I think you're right. There's a lot of people, as we've spoken about on the show, the idea of overnight success, making a buck, within a week, or making $100 online, getting a 6-pack overnight. I think a lot of individuals and entrepreneurs will fall at the hurdle of hard work.
Yeah.
Won't they?
Or just
Because you're looking for that
just the
easy.
uncertainty, or things aren't all set in the business. We're still figuring out how we do it, and for some people that's too stressy. I've got another suggestion, Mark, that I love. Okay, is do a pilot project together first. Now, that could be a pro bono thing together. That could be, why don't you? If we were recruiting another founder, we could say, why don't you just advise us for 3 months? And we just have a call once a week, and we can talk about the business. And then you can start to understand how they think about it. The other thing is they could consult to us for a period as a way that if they want to walk away after 3 months, or if we want to walk away, this would be really good. Because here's the big insight, Mark. So we have this nice kind of speed dating with our third founder. They sound good. We call the references. We like everything checks out. And then within 2 weeks, we realize they're completely schizophrenic, psychotic, dysfunctional. But we just gave them a third of the company. Yeah,
exactly. And that would lead me on to my next point, which would be, and one of the techniques that you were just breaking down there, actually having a kind of practice project enables us to build trust. I think there's a lot to be said around a past experience as well as their reliability.
Yeah.
But not only do you need to try and get your co-founder or co-founders all to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yes.
You also need to know that they will turn up. They will provide valuable points of view.
Yes.
They won't just take it and go and do their own thing.
Well,
they won't just...
Think about this. If we had a founder, we just said Tuesday at 10 a.m. we have a call. If they were late to half of the calls, you and I would probably go, well, we're not going to offer you a founder role because you can't even turn up for a call on time, right?
No.
Or there's a lot of mistakes in their work,
Yeah, that's it. So there's a behavior fit that I think is a key one, as well as a mindset one. Yes. You need to be able. Some businesses are going to be moving at 1,000 miles an hour, and will require speed as well as attention to detail. There will be others that can move at a slightly slower pace. That needs to be built on trust. You need to be able to know that they'll stick around for the long haul.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned like behaviors and mindset. We've actually got one more clip where Sam Altman is turning it up on mindset. And I would say he's almost getting a little Carol Dweck growth mindset on us here.
Look, there's no episode on founders, entrepreneurs that doesn't, Mike, have this element of resilience and grit and the idea of putting in the time and getting it done and focus. And we can't do a show on something as big as AI and on somebody who we've already pitched the idea of him being in the echelon of Elon Musk without demonstrating exactly that and how Sam Altman is singing from that same hymn sheet. So you're right. We've got one more clip today on show 262 that's going to illustrate to us a little bit about where Sam Altman comes from in terms of his values. He's talking to Craig Cannon specifically on focus and also how his opinion of a deferred life structure or life plan doesn't really work for him.
I don't believe in the deferred life plan.
Yeah. Like a common criticism of people in Silicon Valley, who I think have great futures in their past, are people who say some version of the following sentence. My life's work is to build rockets. So what I'm going to do is spend, I'm going to make $100 million in the next maybe they say 4, in the next 4 years trading cryptocurrency with my crypto hedge fund, because I don't want to think about the money problem anymore. And then I'm going to build rockets. And they never do either. I believe if these people would just pick one thing or the other, I'm obsessed with money, so I'm going to go make $100 million, however long that takes, but with a long enough time horizon that it's reasonable. Or I'm just going to build rockets right now. I believe they would succeed at either. But the problem, one of the many problems with the deferred life plan, is everyone can kind of tell that that's what you're on. And you're not that serious you're not that committed to either. And it just never works. I mean, it must work sometimes, but I've seen it fail a lot. And I understand the temptation of it, and I understand the degree to which people feel, well, they're never like, I'm going to make $1 million and then work on rockets and just raise the capital. Right. It's always like, there are people that tend to be obsessed with like making a lot of money. And I understand the temptation to like figure out basic financial security. Of course, like I needed that myself. But like, I think one of the things that's amazing about Silicon Valley is you actually can raise money as an unknown 22-year-old to go make a rocket company. It's happened several times at YC.
Yep.
And so if that's what you want to do, like just get on with it. The company will pay you a salary. Like you'll be fine. If you can raise money at all, you'll be fine. And if you can't raise money, like think about something else. But it is, I mean, I could go on such a long rant that I will just bore people and piss people off. But I would say the deferred life plan empirically usually does not work.
Right.
And if what you want to work on is like an ambitious company and you are in Silicon Valley and you are competent, you very likely can figure out a way to just work on that problem. Maybe it means you have to go be an employee at SpaceX instead of being Elon Musk, but like at least you're doing what you want.
But that's fine. And it's also like, listen, dude, if what you really want is $100 million and you just
then go for that.
Exactly. Just like call a spade and make money.
But be willing to like agree that takes, accept that takes a long time, and you can't just sort of say, I'm going to compress this into 3 or 4 years.
And that's fine. You don't have to
guarantee it doesn't work.
Totally. You don't have to hide behind wanting to make rockets. You can just make money.
Yeah. Well, I think many people actually do want to make the rockets, but you have to like pick one kind of. You have to like, you can't say I'm going to do this thing for this short period of time and then do what I really want to do, or you'll never motivate people to like join you and want you to win and work with you.
Yeah.
I'm in so much agreement, Mark. I want to briefly bring us back to a framework that comes back so much. This is what he's talking about. So if you are focusing mostly down the bottom here on what you can be paid for, you're pursuing a profession and your vocation, but you're going to find yourself lacking passion and mission. Okay. How would you know? You often see people who are comfortable but feeling empty. All right. So I think where he's going to is when I really process this from my personal experience, the hard work is to find a way where you can figure out your ikigai in the middle. That I can say what I did today is something that I'm good at. It's something that I love. The world needs it, and I can be paid for it. Invariably, if you are only doing your career for the money, people will feel that emptiness in your mission. For example, Simon Sinek says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're lacking a why and your why is completely self-serving, it's not contributing anything to what the world needs. In fact, maybe you don't even love it. then you're going to find yourself kind of feeling empty or maybe excited about what you're doing, but you haven't quite aligned, these other components of your ikigai. So the work to do, if you want to build rockets, are you good at it? You got to get good at it. But then you got to figure out, like, how exactly does the world need it? Elon recognized it's the reusability is a huge piece of that. That's what the world really needs, because that's a massive one. Okay, well, I can get paid for that because that means I can drop the price of the average rocket launch, and NASA now gives lots of projects to SpaceX. And I love engineering.
Yeah.
Ikigai, I got it, right? I believe like deferring what you love, deferring passion and mission is a very dangerous path. It's the classic midlife burnout, right? It's the classic, I've been doing this for 10 years and I am empty. I think if you want health and if you want energy, you have to battle hard to get a balance of ikigai. It doesn't mean that everything you do throughout the day and every day of the week is amazing and exciting, but you can trade it off. You can say, every day there's a good part of my day that I truly, deeply feel satisfied. I don't really like the bookkeeping. I don't really like this or that. But the good news is most of my day is not that. It's when what you do all day long doesn't light any fire for you and it's just paying the mortgage. That is that emptiness that comes and gets you in your health, your well-being, your attitude. People are not drawn to you because you're not like fighting for this amazing vision that's truly going to help everyone. You're just like, I'm paying my mortgage. I'm really exciting to hang out with. I just want to pay the mortgage and keep my job and not get fired. Hi, my name's Mike.
Look, I think you're totally right. I think, again, calling back Sarah Blakely and her setting up Spanx, she had a career that was at the time, door to door selling photocopiers, fax machines, which I'm sure was a reputable business. And there's probably a lot of individuals who worked at that business who did enjoy it and had a lot of fun. And Sarah explicitly, said, this wasn't the life I signed up for. This isn't the movie I want to be in.
Yes.
And I think as we think about somebody like Carol Dweck with grit, as we think about knowing your why as a business, as well as your ikigai as an individual, that needs to come first, doesn't it? You need to be able to say, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to feel satisfied. So that when you do start seeing the signs of, as you called it, kind of mid-career burnout, you can look at it and objectively say, why do I feel burnt out? Is it that I'm explicitly tired because of a health reason? Okay, well, no. Is it because of something that I'm doing with my work that I'm not really feeling satisfied about? Okay, yes. How curious. Let me lean into this and find out a little bit more. And I think that really comes down, exactly as we were saying, into understanding that first of all.
Yeah.
And having an alignment into what gets you up out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's so intrinsic, I think, to a lot of the success stories we've seen with our entrepreneurs, including Elon, as we've called out, facing criticism from, astronauts and childhood heroes. He still got on with it. And he still dug into the depths and managed to make his way through it and become very successful. Likewise with Sam, now facing a lot of criticism for OpenAI and also AGI and artificial intelligence in general. He knows that this is where he wants to lean into, and he's fully aligned with the vision and the values that he has in mind. So that helps him stay on track, doesn't it? Well, it helps him dig in deep and do that that focused effort.
So we can flip this around as well, right? There's two sides to this. We talked about people not having passion and mission, but we can also say people that are full of passion and mission, but haven't done the work to figure out how they get paid. So how many struggling artists do we see because they're doing something they love, but they haven't really figured out a way to get paid? This is the hard work, right? You can't just be all passion and then the profits just flow. But you can't just be all profits and no passion. Really, Ikigai is finding the center of that. What's really powerful here is don't defer. If you really want to build the rocket, figure out your Ikigai, figure out your hedgehog model, as Jim Collins says, and get the balance between passion and profit, right? And go out into the world and build that thing.
What a lesson. What a tip.
Oh,
eh?
yeah. Yeah, Mark, we've covered so much ground because naturally Sam has done so much. There's been a ton of lessons. As we just kind of take a breath here, like, what's the homework assignment for you?
I mean, look, we had substantial habitual tips within those 3 lessons that certainly deserve call outs, some of which we've uncovered before, the idea of having an idea as well as being able to execute upon it. However, the thing that stands out to me, Mike, is that final clip, this idea of not deferring it and not always putting off your dream or your ultimate goal in order to go and pursue something else instead. I think this idea of not deferring your life plan is the key call out to me when we hear from Sam Altman. What is your kind of homework? What is your key insight that's going to stick with you following today's show?
I kind of like the idea of sticking to the mission, right? And sharing that with others. I see a lot of founders carrying a huge burden of the mission on their own shoulders. And I don't think it's equally distributed into the leadership. So I think that one's a big one for me. Very, very interesting assignment that I'm going to take on. I want to think about that a little bit more. Well, Mark, I want to say a big thank you to you, my friend. You are fresh back on Australian soil. You've been traveling the world. It's great to have you back in the same time zone. And thank you for sharing all those clips from Mr. Sam Altman. Now, importantly, thank you to you, our listeners, our viewers, and Mark. If there's listeners, there's viewers, there's one other cohort.
All of our members who we absolutely cherish every single week, who are keeping us, I suppose, Mike, as our extended co-founders, are keeping the Moonshot ship afloat.
They certainly are. So a big thank you to you all, viewers, listeners, and members too, for show 262, where we dug into perhaps the next Elon, definitely the next Jensen Huang of NVIDIA. His name is Sam Altman from OpenAI, and we studied 4 big ideas. First of all, the enormous potential of ChatGPT. Holy smoke, things have only just begun. And as he is prone to do, he runs into a few angry and grumpy competitors. His advice is stick to the mission. So you're sticking to the mission on your big bet, on your big dream. There's many different pieces of advice that he has for us. We focused on getting the right founder. Do just some of those things, sticking to the mission, finding the founder, build something that matters. And as you go out there in the world as an entrepreneur, do not defer life. If you want to unlock your potential, get the passion and the profit going at the same time. Don't defer. Do that. In fact, you can do that right here with us. You can learn out loud and be the best version of yourself, because that's what we're all about here on the Moonshots Podcast. That's a wrap.